So Nathan, this is an article that came out on New Year's Eve. So I've kind of had this one in my pocket, but I've been wanting to bounce this off you. So you have not heard this article, to my knowledge. Maybe you have, but if you have not, I wanted to read it to you, see what you thought about it, and we can kind of go from there. This was put up by Global News. A former BC drug user turned harm reduction and recovery advocate and an Alberta addiction physician are proposing governments pay some people to enter treatment. Guy Felicella and Dr. Monty Gosh said that the idea of incentivized treatment would see those who cannot access treatment through other means, including the homeless and those living below the poverty line, could be eligible for a small stipend of $20 a day to enter a 90-day treatment program or facility. The $600 a month would go into people's pockets and not towards food or accommodation costs, giving them something to work with when they leave treatment and attempt recovery. And then it goes on a little bit of into some of the specifics. Contingency management, Ghosh said, is a rewards-based system with incentives to get people into certain treatment programs, and that has been very effective for drugs like methamphetamines, cannabis, and alcohol. One of the big things that substance use hijacks is the reward system of the brain. Felicella, who spent 2 decades fighting homelessness and heroin addiction in Vancouver's downtown east side, is well aware of how a powerful motivator drugs are. He said that he's overdosed 6 times once fentanyl hit the streets before he found a recovery through a safety net of harm reduction, compassion, and Suboxone. Drugs need to be counteracted with another catalyst, Felicella and Gosh said. Monetary incentives work, citing $5 in cash that convinced dozens of downtown east side residents to get their COVID-19 vaccines in 2021. This is giving people confidence back and a little bit of identity that they too are a part of something that's bigger. So I guess my first question is, how does that sit with you? $20 a day for a 90-day treatment program. To your knowledge, with your background, would this be something that would work?
I'm aware of the one of the guys you're talking about there, the guy, whatever his last name is there. I see him on Twitter quite a bit, and he's definitely an advocate for getting people to recover from drugs and alcohol. That does seem to be something that he's pretty interested in, and he's right about the motivation factor as far as, you know, they've done lots of studies like what they did with the COVID there with the getting people to get a shot for $5, but that's not the same.
It's not. No.
You need to. My first question would be: Are they doing this for people who are already seeking treatment, or are they seeking to motivate people solely on a monetary basis? Because I'll tell you right now, from what I understand about how motivation works when your brain is, if you're using a heavy drug chronically, we've talked about it before, you tend to be front loaded. So what that means is your executive function in your prefrontal cortex. I just looked at a study the other day, actually, that they've shown that dendrites start to retract in the prefrontal cortex, and in a weird twist, dendrites extend in the amygdala, in the nucleus accumbens, and all the the areas that are associated with memory and emotion. So you can see how that's a double-edged sword in front loading the brain to we look at it as a now versus future type mindset, right? When you're doing drugs like that on a regular basis, normally the human brain has a kind of level playing field where, as an adult, you understand that delaying gratification is many times better in the long run. Yeah, we don't always do that, but that's kind of what a healthy brain does. It's able to look at both options and make a judgment call. And that's the part of choice, I guess you could say, that is affected by doing drugs on a especially highly rewarding drugs on a consistent basis. It's not that you're unable to delay gratification. It just becomes much harder. So taking that as a kind of framework to work with, and then using a small amount of money like that. I mean, that's even a small amount of money to people who are using drugs, right?
Yes.
It's not going to $20 is like, that's a very mild, like you could get high for $20 a day on meth and fentanyl. It could be done, but you have to be a fairly new user, I think, to be able to get by like that, right? Mm-hmm. To my knowledge, anyways. Maybe if they did studies, and it would be interesting to see at what point, because you'd think there would have to be a number, right, where if there was X amount of dollars presented to get people to go to treatment, they would probably say yes, but I think there'd be many people who would, contrary to what most doctors and maybe a lot of advocates think, that people are able to delay gratification if they can see out the other side of that 90 days, and they're going to get a big chunk of change that they can use. They're going to say, okay, so you're going to feed me and you're going to keep me off the streets for 90 days. You're going to pay me to listen to your program or whatever. And then I'm going to get a bunch of money when I leave this place. My concern would be, are we actually going to kill more people? Mm-hmm. Because now you're giving them a bunch of money, and they've been, you've basically perfectly reset their brain for use. That would be 90 days would arguably be the most dangerous time to give somebody money and send them on their way like that, unless the key thing would be what the initial motivation is. If they were motivated to do it themselves, and you were doing that to give them a way of having a leg up when they get out of treatment, then by all means, I think that's an excellent idea. But it would all come down to what is the individual's motivation for going to treatment in the first place. And if you're trying to lure people into treatment with money, you better have a very safe, like a safety net set up on the other side to monitor for overdoses. That would be my primary concern. And then if you are going to do that, it's an excellent opportunity for data collection, which is sorely missing from a lot of these things. So that would be the 2 points I would make. I mean, the guy's trying to do this in Alberta. That's an uphill battle. I can't see any, like, as far as getting money for something like that, I would be shocked. Yeah. But we'll see. I mean, is it something that's just been kind of proposed, or is it something that's going to go forward, or what's the?
To my knowledge, just proposed.
Okay.
I agree with you, Nathan. I agree with you first about the risk of actually setting people up for overdose on the other side when they come out. We, in our province, there are a lot of nonprofit organizations. There are underpaid social workers and support staff of nonprofits and of government organizations. It's a fact that social workers are hard to find because they're simply not paid enough. There's very little incentive for people to go in and stay in that industry. Mm-hmm. So we've now put people through this mandatory treatment and giving them $600 on the other side, and then what? To me, it's when I think about the allocation of resources, allocation of money, I think I would rather see that go to ensuring that there are better support services and more social workers who are well paid and paid for their many, many hours of hard work. Because I think if we're going to create a lasting change, that's what is needed there, among other things.
If it was coupled with like a halfway house situation or something where there was some ability to have access to enough housing to have a shower every day, and the $600 is like, okay, here's some money to keep yourself fed while you look for a job or something like that. Maybe they intend to do something like that, and that's not mentioned in the story. But I mean, everybody's trying to do the best with their perspective, I think, and he seems like the type of guy whose heart is definitely in the right place. But it's a real tough one when you're trying to incentivize people in that way, I guess. The other thing, if you wanted to run a trial like that, I guess the easiest way to do it would be make it scalable and start very small. And you must differentiate between the people who want treatment and are actively seeking it versus the people who aren't.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you'll get no data that's useful. I think that if you did a cost analysis based on even a few of those, like a few trials of that type of program, it's also 90 days worth of treatment, which is going to be, even if it's in Alberta, you're looking at, I don't know, 40,000, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So that is going to be I think that's going to be a real tough sell as far as the Alberta government's concerned. I don't know if they'd even go for that here, because how do you show results from that? It would be hard.
Yeah.
Because we can't even show results from people who are motivated to go to treatment can do a 90-day treatment in a facility that's, supposed to be high end and they spend a lot of money for, and it's still, it still can be not a great success rate. Right. So, it's interesting. I mean, I've never heard anybody trying to do that before.
I also worry, in briefly reading through the responses that article got, like the comment section of Twitter below that article, it and this doesn't make it a bad idea, but that very proposal is ripe for someone who is very critical of either social services or money towards those who use drugs, or harm reduction advocates. It's like dangling the bait out there for that conflict.
Yeah.
And I wonder if it feeds an idea like that. And I'm all for risk-taking ideas or radical ideas that are going to save lives and make a change. So it's not that, but like that idea, particularly without the support, without flushing the idea out enough so that you have some of those safeguards, and have it as a trial with really carefully collected data and really carefully selected users to come into the trial, and just like show that you're really putting all these pieces together to make it work. It just seems like it's ripe for criticism and more division and more sort of mudslinging towards the drug using community, I think.
Yes. It's so it's so, I don't know, like it definitely, you could look for sources of income, and you could almost check for like government involvement to see if there wasn't some right-wing Albertan premier or rich person who is actively trying to make it the situation worse. That is how that idea looks. Because it doesn't have, there's not a lot of chances for it to succeed versus many disastrous problems that could occur. That again, I don't know. You never know how a story is presented, especially coming out of Alberta. It could be that they had the best of intentions. They did have safeguards in place and they were thinking of that. But if you're not at least aware of the dangers associated with something like that, then I don't think you should probably be, involved in putting those ideas forward.
Yeah. And, so the obvious comparison to me is like, someone listening could say, well, how is that different than the idea of giving giving drug users free, clean drugs. It's very different. It's very different. I mean, you can directly measure the lives saved by someone who suddenly has access to a clean drug supply.
Yeah, it's I mean, I don't see a more pragmatic, common sense approach. And the only argument against it, other than the obvious political nonsense, would be, is it cost effective? Mm-hmm. And I would argue that yes, it is, because if you do the math on, somebody who's already, say they've overdosed once, twice, whatever it may be, every overdose is very, very expensive. Every hospital visit, every ambulance ride, to stay a night in a hospital to recover, even if you get out that day, there's a heavy price tag involved with that. And that's just the overdoses. That's not the physical injury that doesn't turn out to be registered as an overdose. It's just a person is hurting badly and needs to go. Now they need to go see somebody at a walk-in clinic, or, there's all these extra things that add up. And if you eliminate those by providing drugs that are very, very, very cheap to manufacture, then I think again, it wouldn't be hard to do a small study to see what, take 100 chronic users who've had at least one overdose. You could start there. Mm-hmm. Provide them with something cheap like diacetylmorphine, heroin, or hydromorph. Mm-hmm. And see what happens. Do it for a month. See see how expensive it is to do that for a month versus how much of a burden it takes off the healthcare system. And this is not, again, counting the police that are, we're trying to alleviate that. And on top of that, you have to, if you're somebody who's in a situation where you're using a lot of illicit drugs, you have to find that money somewhere. And you need to account for the crime. So you got to take that amount of money that's being taken out of the economy. It's not just people need to understand that it's not just that you're being altruistic and giving people money. In a lot of these cases, I believe that it would actually save us money in the long term. Mm-hmm. And people it seems to be difficult for people to understand that, but and I could be wrong. I could certainly be wrong, but to me, it doesn't look even close. I mean,
no. And without fixing the safe supply issue, without fixing the toxic drug supply that is still on the streets, like it has been for years now, without fixing sort of our very clunky, dysfunctional mental health and healthcare system, understaffed, overserved, putting someone through a treatment program for 90 days to let their tolerance plummet, put $600 in their pocket. And I think it's a recipe for tragedy.
Mm-hmm. Well, I would take that deal. If I was really in a bad place and I was on the street, I'd take that deal just for the shelter and the food. And then I would say, fuck it. I'll use in at the facility too. And, if they catch me, they catch me. What are they going to do? Boot me out of the program? I don't get my money. Who cares? I still, people are not idiots.
No.
So I don't know. Yeah, that's a pretty cool story to bring up. Interesting.
We'll keep our eye on that one. Yeah.
Yeah. I'd love to hear a response from
Guy.
Well, from Guy, I'd be more interested in a response from the Alberta government, because I think that would be pretty funny.
You would. Yeah, it would.